Okay, so today we're going to be working with finding our asymptotes and of course the domain. This is review for you. You have seen this before. Not exactly sure what method you use, but you have seen it. All right, and you guys can tell me as we go how you did it. Y equals 1 over x plus 3. Okay, we are going to find the domain. We are going to find the vertical asymptotes. As well as the horizontal asymptotes. And then tomorrow we will start the sketching. Okay, domain. You can write an interval notation. I mean, it's up to you. I'm not going to. But can anybody tell me what restriction we have here because it's a fraction? The denominator cannot equal 0, so what can x not equal? So we would say the domain is all reals such that x does not equal -3. Again, if you like interval notation, you're more than welcome to use it. Okay, do you guys agree it's all reals where x cannot equal -3? Yes? All right. Vertical asymptotes and horizontal asymptotes. We don't have any information for that yet, so I'm going to put a note on the side right over here how to find them, and you guys can tell me what you did last year. Okay. How to find the vertical asymptote. All right, and it's pretty simple. You just ask yourself, what makes the denominator equal 0? Okay, and what makes the denominator 0 in this case? -3. So your vertical asymptote is x equals -3. Okay, when we actually get to sketching, we're not going to be sketching today, but when we get to sketching, does it make sense that if x cannot equal -3, you're going to have an asymptote there? Mm-hmm. Right? Like we had here, when I just showed you guys the graph, x could not equal 0, so it makes sense that the graph gets really close, but it never touches the x equals 0. Do you guys see that? Okay, so it's the same concept. Same thing here. We had this one last week. What could x not equal here? X cannot equal what? +1, and is that where the asymptote is right there on the +1? Okay, so does it make sense that our vertical asymptotes come on wherever our restrictions occur, whatever makes the denominator 0? All right. That you did last year, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, this next piece you can tell me because I'm not sure what you did. How to find the horizontal asymptote. Okay, you take the limit as x approaches infinity of your function. Now, did you do the limit as x approached infinity last year? No? Okay, so when you did you guys just do domain and vertical, maybe not horizontal asymptotes? Or do you guys just not remember? Don't remember? Okay, so did you guys graph stuff like this last year? So do you remember finding the vertical and the horizontal, the VAHA and the x-intercept and y-intercept? Yeah. All right. Okay, so seen it, not quite sure how you did this piece if you did it, but we have our shortcut now, so let's go ahead and do that. You take the limit as x approaches infinity. So we're going to use the top heavy, bottom heavy stuff. Is this top, bottom, or the same? Bottom. And because it is bottom, what is our answer? 0. So we write it as y equals 0. Vertical will always be x equal, horizontal will always be y equal. So take a look and see if it makes sense. All right. Number 2. F of x equals 7x over 5 minus 2x. All right, and I'm going to box this in up here, this in, because that is our answer. And I'm going to shorten all of this. I'm just going to use D, and D stands for what? Domain. And then VA stands for vertical asymptote, and HA stands for horizontal. And we will eventually add a SAW. That'll be another lesson where we add a slant asymptote. That'll be tomorrow. All right, domain. Just like we did before, the denominator cannot equal 0. So either in your head or on your paper, 5 minus 2x cannot equal 0, and you solve. Remember, when you're taking a test, the more work you show, the more partial credit I can give. All right, so do whatever you do, add or subtract, divide. What is your domain? All reals, where x cannot equal what? X cannot equal 5/2. Do you guys agree? Mm-hmm. Yes? All right. Vertical, how do we find the vertical? We just found that. So what is x going to equal? 5/2. And horizontal, how do we find the horizontal? The limit? Okay, so x approaches infinity. Top heavy, bottom heavy are the same? Same. And what do we do when it's the same? Leading coefficient. So that is 7 over 5 or over -2? So x equals or y equals? Y equals -7 over 2. Now it should make sense because vertical runs up and down. And what kind of lines are the vertical lines? X equals or y equals? X equals. And horizontal runs right and left. And what kind of lines are horizontal? X equals or y equals? So do you see why the vertical asymptotes are x equals and the horizontal are y equals? Okay, number 3. F of x equals x plus 3 over x squared minus x. I'm going to have you write D, VA, and HA, and I'm going to let you try this one on your own. I will tell you this one is a little different because there's more pieces to the domain as well as the vertical. It is possible to have more than one vertical asymptote. Not horizontal, but it is possible to have more than one vertical. you have to do differently on this one that we haven't had to do on the others? What do we have to do to the denominator? I heard one person whisper it. Factor? Yes, what do we factor out? X, and that's x minus 1. So are there two restrictions for our domain? So all reals where x cannot equal 0 or 1. And if you write it like that, it's okay. Cannot equal 0, comma 1. If you want to put x cannot equal 0, comma x cannot equal 1, that's fine as well. All I ask is whenever you write verticals, because these are equations of a line, you do write them separately. So x equals, comma, x equals. So what's the first one? And x, the second one, x equals 1. So again, up here, if you just put x equals 0, comma 1, that's fine. But can you write it like that when you write your vertical? No, when you're writing the equation of a line, you need to give it its own x. X equals 0, x equals 1. Horizontal, what do we find? The limit as x approaches infinity. So we do our top heavy, bottom heavy, same. What is it? Bottom heavy, regardless if it's looked at this way or this way, it's still bottom heavy, right? Degree is 2, degree is 2. What happens when it's bottom heavy? Y equals 0. Questions? Okay, number 4. F of x equals x squared minus 36 over x squared plus 6x. Okay, there is a little more to this one because not only can I factor the denominator, I can now also factor the numerator. Okay, so let's factor difference of two squares, GCF. Okay, what do you get for the top? X minus 6 and x plus 6, and the bottom I'm left with x plus 6. What's a little different about this one? We can what? Reduce. We can cancel things out. Do you guys agree? Okay, that does change things. Once you come to problems where you can reduce, it does change a little bit in how you find your domain and your va and your ha. All right, so let's write down what changes. I'm going to write it over here. You will always find your domain before reducing. You will always find your domain before reducing. The reason is, even if you cross out the x plus 6, it's still a restriction in the original problem. Do you agree? What's the restriction here? When I cross this out, what restriction am I losing? Negative 6. But what's negative 6 squared? Positive 36. And what's 6 times negative 6? And 36 minus 36 is 0. So even though I reduce it, is it still part of my restrictions? Yes. Okay, so the domain, before I do any reducing, the domain is all reals such that x cannot equal what two numbers? We already said one of them was negative 6. What's the other one? 0. All right. Does that make sense? Do you guys see how I got that? Okay. Then your va, you find everything else after. That includes your va and your ha. Find everything else after reducing. All right, so there's only one thing you find before reducing, everything else you find after. What's the one thing you do before reducing? Domain. After that, reduce away, simplify, and then you find the rest. All right, now we're ready for the rest. What is my vertical asymptote?
X equals 0.
X equals 0. Do you guys see that? Now, no one asked it, and I was waiting, and it's okay that you didn't, but usually kids will say, will these always be the same? X cannot equal -3, X is -3. X cannot equal 5/2, X is 5/2. X cannot equal 0, 1, X equals 0, X equals 1. Did anybody, even if you didn't say it, notice it? Yes. Okay, and so the question is that always going to work? Yes, unless you're able to reduce, because when you reduce, are they the same? No, because the domain has this -6, but we reduced it, and now it's not part of our vertical asymptote. Does that make sense? Okay, and horizontal, top heavy, bottom heavy, or the same? Same, so we take our leading coefficients, which are 1/1, so X equals 1 or Y equals 1? Y equals 1. Okay, questions? Does it seem doable? Not too bad. You want to make sure you get to practice with this today, because tomorrow we're going to take this and graph it. And so you want to get the practice now, so when it comes time to graph, you have all these tools and you know how to use them. Questions here before I move on to the next piece? All right, the next piece is also stuff we are going to use for our graphing, and it's find the x-intercepts. I'm going to put parentheses here, also known as the zeros. Find your zeros, find your x-intercepts. We use our x-intercepts and our y-intercepts to help us graph, just like we did in our last unit. All right, how do we find x-intercepts? Set y equal to 0. Okay, number 1. F of x equals x squared minus 9 over x plus 1. Where is the y in this problem? The f of x? Okay, so 0 equals x squared minus 9 over x plus 1. And what do we do to both sides? Okay, I heard one person answer. Does anyone else know what to do? Okay, I'm going to just pause here. If this was a question on a test and I've done no explaining, would you guys know how to do this from prior experiences? Okay, anyone throw it out there? Okay, multiply both sides by x plus 1. And what happens here with the x plus 1s? They cross out. And what happens to x plus 1 times 0? 0 equals x squared minus 9. How do I solve that? Factor, difference of two squares. I heard two different people say that. X plus 3, x minus 3. X plus 3 equals 0, x minus 3 equals 0. What are your two solutions? -3 and +3, plus or minus 3 is fine. Those are your x-intercepts. So on this function, this graph, how many x-intercepts will you have? 2. Okay, number 2. G of x equals 5x plus 3 over 2x minus 1. Go ahead and try that one on your own. All right. What did you guys get? Negative 3/5. You guys said it equal to 0? And what did you multiply both sides by? By the denominator of 2x minus 1. Does it cross out on both sides? Well, it crosses it on this side, and this side it multiplies to 0, correct? 0 equals 5x plus 3. Subtract, divide. X equals negative 3/5. Okay, questions on that? When you have a fraction and you're solving and you always do this multiply by the denominator when it equals 0, what's always going to happen with the denominator? It's always going to what? Cancel out and always going to equal 0 on the other side. Do you agree? Does it make sense that if you have a fraction, the one thing that cannot equal 0 is the bottom? That the only thing that can equal 0 is the numerator. Does that make sense? Yes? All right. Next one, number 3. F of x equals 5 minus 3 over x plus 7. Okay, this one is a little different. Okay, 0 equals 5 minus 3 over x plus 7. And what do we multiply both sides by? Is this one different? Can I still multiply both sides by x plus 7? But when I do that, I have to do what? Multiply it to the 5. And I should have asked first, what would you guys do? Because some kids have said move the 5 over, some kids say leave it. What would you guys do? I should have started with that. Most of you say move the 5 over. Okay, so subtract the 5. Negative 5 equals negative 3 over x plus 7. And then multiply both sides by what? Now on this one, does it cross out here? No, it's not 0 here. It reduces on this side. That still happens. But on this side, you will have to distribute your negative 5. And what do we get when we distribute? Perfect. And I'll let you guys finish. Negative 5x minus 35 equals negative 3. Move things around. Divide. And what's your final answer? X equals what? Negative 32 over 5. Are we good? Questions?